Palantir's shareholders and management has won. But the real question you have to ask yourself is, will you win with them going forward? I'm Eddie from the Core Alpha Mind, and today we are going to deep dive into Palantir's Q2 2025 earnings, and we will see what we should do with this stock going forward, and is there an opportunity with Palantir right now. So let's get started. So Palantir reported frankly stellar earnings, and this was actually incredible to see how fast they are growing in this market. So they grew total revenue by 48%. In the US commercial, they grew by 93%, which is actually incredible. And in the public sector, so with the US government, they grew by 53%. So which shows that in the US, Palantir is growing very, very fast. A little bit of slowdown or a little bit of more difficulties in other countries, but definitely Palantir has shown some pretty strong numbers in this quarter. So with the rule of 40, like we can see that today Palantir is at almost 94%, which is actually in another dimensions compared to any other companies. So what you have to actually remember here is that Palantir have demonstrated some very strong numbers. So to illustrate that, in the US commercial sector, so the number of customers grew year on year by 64%. The number of deals over $1 million doubled basically, and the number of deals over $5 million almost 5x. So these are incredible numbers for a company actually this size in the US commercial sector. So what we are seeing is that Palantir is definitely growing very fast, especially thanks to their AIP bootcamps and their AIP platform. And so what we are seeing is really like the vision that they had a few years ago developing today in the US market. Also a few key numbers to remember. So Palantir actually succeeded to reach the $1 billion per quarter on this Q2 2025 quarter, and is guiding for $4 billion actually in 2025. So which actually shows that they have reached the $4 billion mark. And if we compare that to their market cap, I think that you realize is that they have a 100x price to sales, which is a bit high, to be honest. But having said that, so we are seeing strong growth in terms of revenue. In terms of net income, so Palantir reported a $400 million net income, which is actually pretty good. So now if we focus more on the cash side, so Palantir reported adjusted free cash flow this quarter, Q2 2025, of $569 million, which corresponds to a free cash flow margin of 57%, which is actually incredible for any company. And in terms of balance sheet, so today Palantir has almost $6 billion on their balance sheet, and they're generating with that almost like $60 million on this quarter in terms of net interest. Okay, so these was the numbers for this quarter, but the guidance was also pretty strong. So what we've seen is that Palantir guided for the Q3 2025, 50%, which is actually an acceleration from this quarter. And so this is actually pretty strong. And for the full year guidance, so they are guiding 85% in US customers or US commercial, I would say. The full year guidance in terms of revenue for Palantir is actually set today at 45%, which is actually going to be pretty incredible for a company of this size. Okay, so now what's next for Palantir? So we've seen that they are guiding very strong growth for 2025, and they are pretty confident that they can 10x their US commercial business, which is actually pretty incredible if you look at the size it has today. So the management is pretty confident in terms of growth. And so one key area where they're going to grow and where they're going to land and expand is definitely in the US with the commercial pictures and with the private customers, where they are definitely demonstrating the value of their product, the value of the ontology, and the value of their AIP platform. So definitely, I think that we are going to continue to see pretty strong growth in terms of AIP in the US. In terms of government, obviously, you know that they have pretty strong connection with the Trump administration. And so that's why they're going to continue to receive a lot of different contracts, even though that we have seen that they have been challenged a little bit by OpenAI, for example, or by other companies in the government, because the reality is that even within the government, there is some kind of income fraud, I would say, that Palantir is taking that many contracts in the US government. So definitely something to watch out going forward, but they are definitely with the right administration for them, and they have demonstrated so far that they are able to grow very strongly within the government and in the public sector. One aspect where they might face some difficulty is actually internationally. Why? Because with the tariff war and the Liberation Day that Trump started, I'm pretty sure that a lot of allies country are not going to actually see very keenly the fact that Palantir is trying to get into their own system. And definitely, I don't see anyone outside of the US trying to get Palantir system, given the fact that it will actually be an over-reliance on US system. And like the past has demonstrated to a lot of these allies, so Japan, Europe, for example, that this is definitely a bad idea, and a government like the Trump administration has been able to actually kind of use that or leverage that to their advantage, and I don't think that these countries, they really want that. So I think it's kind of difficulty for Palantir to actually grow internationally in this context. So even with these strong numbers, one thing also to remember, and not a lot of people are actually mentioning that, is that within the net income of Palantir, I think that you have two things that are kind of very important to understand. So the first thing is that I'm sure that all of you know, because this has been discussed for years, and even when the stock was at $7, it was discussed, is the share-based compensation. So yes, the share-based compensation actually at Palantir is actually pretty significant. If you look at the share outstanding, it grew like more than 6% like year over year. And so it shows you that all the shareholders, they are diluted year over year continuously. And so after 10 years, like definitely it will impact the stock price and all the shareholders. And on top of that, so the share or the net income, sorry, is actually including all the net interest income that they are gaining from their $6 billion on their balance sheet. With the decrease of interest rate, most likely this will be reduced. The good thing is that it becomes actually a smaller and smaller share every quarter of the total net income. So definitely not as impactful as what it could have been a few years ago. But definitely this is something also to watch, because this is 60 million on almost 400 million quarter. And so this is not, I would say, non-significant. This is 20% of the net income. But definitely we have seen very strong numbers for Palantir. Okay, so we've seen that Palantir, the company, is doing pretty great, and we've seen some incredible and pretty strong numbers from Palantir on this quarter. But let's not lie to ourselves. Palantir does not trade on fundamental, or the ticker symbol PLTR does not trade on these fundamentals at all. So what we've seen is that the price to sales, even with this growth and this revenue, is more than 100x, which actually is incredible and does not really make sense in any way you look at it, because it means that even if Palantir becomes one of the most powerful companies in the world, it means that everything is already priced in today. So even if they 10x all their revenue, then it means that they're going to trade at what? 10x their revenue, which is actually already pretty high for a standard technology company. And so what you can expect is that, well, I think the best scenario is that they continue to grow as a business, and the stock is going to stagnate in the next 5 years or next 10 years. But the reality is that, well, we are going to see in the future. I cannot predict what the stock is going to do, to be honest, but definitely what I know is that this stock does not trade on fundamentals for sure. Okay, so the stock does not move on fundamentals. So what moves the stock? Well, actually, I think that nobody knows really, but the reality is that there are so many option plays on Palantir, is that definitely these are these option plays that are pushing the price higher and higher and being very disconnected from the fundamentals. We have seen that with Tesla before. This is the exact same type of relationship. We have a business which is actually quite pretty strong, but the stock price itself is actually going way beyond the strength of the business, which doesn't really make sense for any investors. But the reality is that the business is going higher, the stock price is going higher and higher, even though the business is not as strong as the stock itself. And so I think that there are some kind of dodgy plays in the background here, because we are seeing some kind of gamma squeeze, some kind of very far out of the money options on Palantir. So what moves the stock? I think that investors today, they should not actually lie to themselves. This is not the fundamentals. These are other factors in the background that are moving the stock. Because one example is that the stock today is up 4 or 5% after market, after the Q2 earnings, which means that they added like almost $10 billion in terms of market cap, but their revenue is only $4 billion for a full year. So how does you make sense of that? Okay, so now the fundamental question you're asking yourself, should you buy Palantir? First of all, a disclaimer, well, this is not financial advice. You have to do your own due diligence and take your own decisions. And so this is only my opinion. So Palantir today is actually after market at $168, $169 per shares. It sits at more than 100 times sales and almost like 500 or like 1,000 times in terms of P ratio. So should one buy Palantir? Well, actually, this is the same problem, the same overvaluation since $50, or even some would say since $20. And the reality is that, well, maybe not, but I will give you my opinion. I think that Palantir shareholders and top management, they have won. Okay, so this is done. And if you're a new investor, you should not invest in Palantir, in my opinion, in my honest opinion. Why? Because this is chasing stock. This is basically fear of missing out. I'm not sure what type of results you are expecting from buying Palantir at 168 today. Maybe you hope to have a 2x, I don't know. But I don't think that Palantir is going to go beyond the $200, even though that I didn't think that it will go beyond the $100 and beyond the $150. Having said that, my posture and my opinion on Palantir is still the same. It's a very great company, but the stock today is definitely detached from the business itself. I think that people, they are seeing the strengths in the business reflected in terms of stock price, but definitely these are completely two different things. And so my opinion on that is that one should not buy Palantir because the risks are too substantial. Palantir can definitely come back below $100 and still be overvalued, and still continue to trade below $100 and still continue to be a great business. So depending on the macro condition, depending on the next result, if they don't overperform once again, then you might see some kind of weakness in the name. And what's going to happen is what happened to Tesla, for example, coming from 420 to 200, and all the people who have bought at the top, where they kind of left holding the bag. But those who have bought like at $7, for Palantir, but those who have bought at $200, $300 for Tesla at the time, definitely these people, they have made a lot of money. And even if the stock actually got cut in half, well, they still had pretty good returns. So be careful in this market. And I would say that don't be tempted to actually chase this stock, and don't be tempted to have this type of FOMO. So now, should you short Palantir or should you short PLTR? Well, I think that this is also a bad idea. This is only my opinion, but I think this is a bad idea because as long as the stock doesn't behave in line, or I would say still related to the business itself, I think that it's going to be very difficult to actually short Palantir or actually like predict kind of a revaluation of the stock, especially as Palantir is still continuing to show that they are growing, they are still very strong in terms of business. So a revaluation of Palantir, or I would say like a decline in terms of valuation, is going to come at some point, but it's very hard to actually predict. And it might come in 5 years, for example. And it's very difficult to actually keep your short for such a long time, especially if in the meantime, the stock can shoot to $200, $250. And in this case, you will be in pretty difficult time. So I think that in general, this is not a good idea to actually short strong companies, especially when the valuation of these companies are detached from the actual business. So my opinion is that Palantir is not a good short, and everyone and every rational global investor should definitely stay away from this practice. Beyond shorting Palantir, so we've seen today that the Q2 2025 earnings and numbers from Palantir were incredibly strong. So we've seen like revenue growth of 48% in this quarter, and we will see in 2025, so pretty strong growth at 45% guided by the management. So Palantir, is it a buy? Well, in my opinion, it is not at this moment for new investors because this is too risky given the valuation, which is detached from the actual business. So any macro environment or any change in terms of the sentiment around the stock and around the stock market can actually cut the stock in half. So be careful in this market. If you're also interested in the analysis like this one, so please check my other videos. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in another one. Bye.